Title: My son-in-law buried a metal box at 2 a.m. When I dug it up, I was horrified by what I found. I still hear the sound of the shovel breaking the soil. Slow, careful, like he was afraid the ground itself might scream. It was 2 a.m., and my son-in-law thought no one was watching. But I was awake, and some instincts don't sleep. I never believed I'd be the kind of man who spies on his own family. Yet that night, standing behind my bedroom curtain, heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest, I knew something was wrong. Let me start from the beginning. My daughter, Ariba, was my whole world. I raised her alone after her mother passed, teaching her how to be strong, how to trust people, but also how to read the silence between their words. When she married Saad, my son-in-law, I prayed I was handing her life over to safe hands. And at first, it felt like I had. Saad was polite, almost too polite. He spoke softly, never raised his voice, always offered to help me with small things, fixing a leaky tap, carrying groceries, asking about my health. He called me Abu with respect, the kind that makes an old man's chest feel warm. He listened more than he spoke. I took that as maturity. They moved into the portion behind my house while saving for their own place. I liked having them close. Dinner together most nights, laughter drifting through thin walls. The normal sounds of a happy home. But happiness, it can be a mask. There were small things I brushed off because I wanted peace more than suspicion. Saad never talked about his past. Not his childhood, not old friends, not even old jobs. If I asked, he'd smile and say, nothing worth remembering. He kept his phone locked at all times. Face down, always face down, and sometimes, late at night, I'd hear him step into the yard, standing there in the dark, doing nothing. Just standing. When I asked Ariba about it, she laughed. Abu, he just can't sleep sometimes. I told myself to trust her judgment. Until that night, I had woken up thirsty. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. As I passed the window facing the backyard, a movement caught my eye. A shadow. Then the sound. Metal scraping against dirt. I pulled the curtain aside just enough. Saad was out there, wearing old clothes. No phone, no light except the weak glow from the porch bulb he'd switched on. In his hands, a shovel. My first thought was stupid. Maybe he's fixing a pipe. But there were no pipes there. I watched as he dug. Slowly, deliberately, not rushed, not panicked. Like he'd done this before, or at least rehearsed it in his mind 100 times. Then he stopped. He bent down and lifted something heavy from beside him. A metal box, not small, not decorative, industrial, dented at the edges, as if it had been handled roughly. He wiped it once with his sleeve, hesitated, then placed it gently into the hole. Gently. That's what scared me the most. He covered it back up, pressing the soil down with his hands, smoothing it like he was tucking the ground into sleep. Then he stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot. And for just a second, he looked afraid. The next morning, Saad was normal. Too normal. He laughed at breakfast, kissed Ariba's forehead, asked me if I wanted tea or coffee. I studied his hands, clean, no dirt under the nails. Whatever he'd buried, he'd planned it well. All day, the image burned inside my mind. That box, that careful burial. By evening, I told myself to forget it. Families survive on the things they choose not to question. But trust, once cracked, doesn't heal quietly. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I did something I never thought I would. I went into the yard. The moon was thin, barely helping. I stood where I remembered him standing. The soil looked untouched, but I noticed something only a father who has gardened his whole life would see. The earth was too flat. I fetched an old spade from the shed. My hands were shaking, not from fear of getting caught, but from fear of being right. The first few inches were easy. Then the sound changed. Clang. Metal. My breath caught in my throat. I dug faster, guilt fighting curiosity, loyalty fighting dread. When the edge of the box appeared, my heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my ribs. There it was, the same metal box. Up close, I saw scratches. Old labels peeled off, a faint smell I couldn't place, sharp, unpleasant, unfamiliar. I stared at it for a long time. This was my daughter's husband. The man I trusted with her life. My hands hovered over the lid. I remember thinking, if I open this, nothing will ever be the same. I unclasped the lock, and just as the lid began to lift, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, careful, familiar. Someone had come into the yard. And before I could turn around, a calm voice spoke my name in the dark. Abu, what are you doing? The moment he said my name, my hands froze on the metal lid. I didn't turn around right away. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed one last second to remember the man I thought my son-in-law was. I slowly stood up and faced Saad. He was calm, too calm, no anger, no panic, just disappointment, like a teacher catching a student cheating. Abu, he said again, softer this time. You shouldn't be here. The box sat between us, half dug, the lid barely open. Moonlight reflected off its dull surface. I could feel my heart beating in my ears. You buried this at 2 in the morning, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. In my house, in my yard. He looked down at the box, then back at me. I was hoping you wouldn't notice. That sentence, it didn't sound like regret. It sounded like miscalculation. I asked the question that had been clawing at my chest since the night before. What is it, Saad? For a moment, I thought he might lie. Instead, he sighed and sat down on the edge of the flower bed, like a man finally tired of holding a pose. Proof, he said. Of what? Of who I really am. Silence fell between us, heavy, thick, the kind that makes you aware of every breath you take. I didn't want you to find out like this, he continued. Especially not you. My stomach twisted. Find out what? He nodded toward the box. Open it. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed that once I looked inside, there would be no way back to ignorance. But I had already crossed that line the moment I picked up the spade. I lifted the lid fully. Inside were documents, stacks of papers, old envelopes, photographs sealed in plastic, a small voice recorder, and right on top, an envelope with my daughter's name written on it. My vision blurred. What is this? I whispered. Saad stood up slowly. That's her real life, the one she never told you about. My heart dropped. Don't lie to me about my daughter. I'm not, he said. She asked me not to tell you. I looked at him sharply. Asked you? He nodded. Years ago, before I married her. My hands shook as I picked up one of the photos. It was Ariba, but younger. Sitting in a room I didn't recognize. Her eyes looked different, tired, afraid. I felt like the ground was slipping away beneath me. She didn't want you to know how much she struggled after her mother died, Saad said quietly. The therapy, the medication, the things she went through alone. I swallowed hard. Why would you bury this? Because you weren't supposed to find it, he replied. I was keeping it safe. Safe from what? He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. But I noticed. From you, he finally said. That hurt more than I expected. You think I would judge my own daughter? My voice cracked. That I would stop loving her? No, he said quickly. I think you'd blame yourself. That landed. I would have. Saad continued. She's afraid that if you know everything, you'll carry it like a burden. And she couldn't do that to you. I looked back into the box. The voice recorder felt heavier than it should have. I didn't press play, but somehow, I could already hear my daughter's voice in my head. I love her, Saad said. More than my own life. Everything I do is to protect her. Then why hide it like a crime? I asked. He met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear, real fear. Because someone else is looking for this box. The air around us went cold. Who? I asked. He shook his head. That's not something I can explain tonight. Saad, I said slowly, you married into my family. You don't get secrets like this. I didn't want secrets, he replied. But some truths don't stay buried if you leave them out in the open. That word again. Buried. I closed the lid of the box. Does Ariba know you hid this here? I asked. No, he said, and I plan to move it tomorrow. My chest tightened. Out of my house. Yes. Without telling her. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. Saad wasn't dangerous because he was cruel. He was dangerous because he believed, completely, that he was right. You don't get to decide what she knows, I said firmly. She's not a child. He stepped closer. And you don't get to protect her from everything anymore. That felt like a line being crossed. I trusted you, I said. I welcomed you as my son. He nodded. I know. And you stood in my yard at 2 in the morning burying parts of my daughter's life like they didn't belong to her. His voice hardened. I stood there trying to keep her safe. We stared at each other. 2 men, 1 daughter between us. Finally, he spoke. If you tell her about this box, she'll never forgive you. The words sank deep. Is that a threat? I asked. No, he said softly. It's a warning. I looked down at the metal box. At the weight of secrets inside it. At the trust I'd placed in a man I was no longer sure I knew. Footsteps echoed from inside the house. A door opened, and then I heard my daughter's voice, sleepy and confused, calling out into the night. Abu, Saad, what's going on? Saad and I both turned toward the sound. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever choice I made next would break someone I loved.